Hi there, I'm Joe Ty, and I want to thank Quint Studer and his team for putting on the Gratitude Symposium again this year and for inviting me back. You know, we have had a very difficult 2 or 3 or 4 past years. There has been incredible heartbreak. People are exhausted. There's anger. And we're seeing this reflected in an increase in rudeness, incivility, even things like bullying. The research shows it. I know you've experienced it. And it's more important now, with all of this going on, it's more important now than ever to feel grateful. It is also harder than ever because of those things. And that is the ultimate paradox in life. Whatever you most need in life will be the hardest for you to find at exactly the time you need it the most. It's easy to be motivated when everything's going great. Job's going well, you just got a pay raise, the kids are happy, you're on your way to vacation, you're motivated. But it's irrelevant because things are already going well. It's when your job is falling apart, the kids are in trouble, your health is in trouble. Those are the times when it's hardest to be motivated. But if you can bring yourself to give yourself that spark, that's when you turn things around. It's easy to have integrity when there's no temptation. It's when you find the wallet on the ground full of money that is hardest to have integrity, especially if you're not paying your own bills. It's easy to have courage when your fears are small, to persevere going over little speed bumps. It's when your fears are monstrous and the speed bumps have become brick walls that is hardest for you to have courage and perseverance, but that is when it is most important. And it's easy to be grateful when you have everything you want, everything you've asked for, everything you could ever want. It's hardest to be grateful. It's hardest to serve other people when you don't have everything you need yourself, but that is when it is most important. Gratitude is what prevents you from getting out on a very treacherous, slippery slope, from resentment to complaining, to blaming other people, to feeling like a victim. And it's very hard to come back up that slope once you've gone down it. The opposite of gratitude is resentment. We resent when we don't have what we want. We don't have the things we want, the things we need. We get resentful and we complain about it. If we don't have the job we want, we get rejected for the job we apply for. We don't get paid what we think we deserve, what we probably do deserve. We get resentful. When our candidate doesn't get elected, when the laws we want to see passed don't get passed, we're resentful. If we're asked to do something, told to do something we don't want to do, we get resentful. And then we start circling the drain of resentment and we end up in a swamp of anxiety and depression, this emotional maelstrom that is unfortunately at epidemic levels today because of the pandemic, the economy, everything else that's been going on. And here's the thing, gratitude nourishes your soul. Resentment corrodes your soul. We express gratitude very simply. 2 words. 2 words expresses gratitude. Thank you. Thank God. Thank heavens. We can express gratitude very easily. Resentment takes a whole lot of words. In fact, there's a whole club. The resentment club, you could think of it. The BMW club. Bitching, moaning, whining, complaining. Which also is at epidemic levels today. That's how we express our resentment. And it wipes out thank you. For my money, I've been in healthcare more than 40 years. For my money, the most important single sentence in that entire 40 plus years is from a white paper by IHI, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. Came out in 2017 on joy at work. And they said, and I'm paraphrasing here, joy at work doesn't just affect patient satisfaction and the employee experience and engagement. It affects everything. Quality, safety, productivity, what it's like to work there, morale, everything. And nothing rains on joy at work like complaining and its caustic cousin commiserating. Think of that word, commiserate. be miserable together. And we sit around and we whine and complain and we vent on each other. Oh yeah, you think you got it bad. And the way to stop that circling the drain, to get off that slippery slope, is to address complaining head on and to replace resentment with gratitude. For most of us, me included, complaining is a deeply ingrained habit. We do it so often, we're not even aware of how often we're complaining. We're not even aware of how much complaining is going on around us. And if you stop to pay attention, you will be astonished. No, you will be appalled at how much complaining you do, especially if you don't just think about what you're saying, but you think about what you're thinking. Every time you think this sort of resentful thought, that's not right, I deserve better than that, you will be astonished at how much of your mental energy goes to that. And here's the thing, we never complain if we're happy, do we? No, complaining is resentment. Happy is thank you. Let me be very clear before we talk more about complaining and how to reduce its impact. Let me be very clear about one thing. I am not talking about identifying real problems. If there's a real problem, identify it, work on finding a solution. If you can't do it yourself, talk to somebody who can. If you're not getting the hearing you need, keep going back. Proceed until apprehended, my favorite 3 words. We're not talking about identifying problems. We're not talking about fixing problems. We're talking about whining and complaining about problems and not doing anything about it. In his beautiful book, The Last Lecture, Randy Pausch wrote, "Complaining is a bad strategy. It doesn't work." And he's right. Nobody ever solved a problem by complaining about it, did they? In fact, sometimes complaining about problems simply makes them worse. Nobody has ever made themselves happy by complaining. In fact, as I said before, sometimes complaining gets you out on that slippery slope. You start circling the drain of emotional negativity toward anxiety and depression and more resentment and more complaining, and it feeds on itself. Nobody has ever inspired other people by complaining. In fact, quite to the contrary, all your complaining does is drag other people down, bring them down into the emotional swamp with you. And nobody has ever increased their own sense of self-empowerment by complaining. Quite to the contrary, when you complain about something, you're really putting yourself in the victim mode. Oh, I can't do anything about it. Oh, poor me. Oh, I deserve better than this. And without meaning to, at a subconscious level, you see yourself as a victim. You know, complaining, chronic complaining, venting, gossiping about other people behind their back, it's really that toxic emotional negativity is the spiritual and emotional equivalent of cigarette smoke in the workplace. If you're old enough to remember when people smoked everywhere, how it was just, there was a cloud in the hospital cafeteria. You couldn't protect yourself from it on an airplane. You couldn't protect your children. It was everywhere. We would never go back to tolerating that because now we appreciate how wonderful life is when we're not being chronically poisoned by other people's cigarette smoke. And I guarantee you this, if wherever you work, you could go for 30 days with no bitching, moaning, whining, complaining, you'd never go back either because you say, hey, this is pretty nice. Chronic complainers are the emotional vampires. We call them pickle suckers. Because at least metaphorically, they look like they've been sucking on a dill pickle. We tell people, enjoy eating your pickles, just don't look like you've been sucking on one. It's that toxic emotional negativity that sucks the joy out of the work. One person comes in a room, and the joy dissipates. It sucks the energy out of the people around them. And it sucks the life out of an organization. And we all do it. We all do it a lot more than we think we do. In her book, No Ego, Cy Wakeman, motivational speaker, drama researcher, her research shows that the average employee spends 2.5 hours a day on drama, including complaining and gossiping and things like that. Our own research at Values Coach reinforces that. We have a validated culture assessment survey. It's called the VCI, Values Coaching, VCI 17 because it has 17 questions. One of those questions, we ask people to estimate what percent of all paid hours in your organization get wasted on whining, complaining, and toxic emotional negativity. We've done over 100 hospitals and health systems and many others outside of healthcare. The lowest I have ever seen, and this was on a company that consistently is rated one of the best places to work in America, the lowest I've ever seen is 8%. The highest I've ever seen is 27%. That means almost a quarter of all work hours in that organization are wasted on toxic emotional negativity. Now, if you're a chief financial officer, think of the cost of that. If 10%, 20% of all paid hours are being wasted on whining and complaining, beyond the impact on patient satisfaction, patient experience, employee engagement, employee experience, your image in the community, just the flat basic cost of paying people to bitch, moan, whine, and complain. If you're the CEO of a critical access hospital, you are probably paying people several $100,000 or more a year to bitch, moan, whine, and complain. If you're the CEO of a medium-sized community hospital, it's somewhere between $5 million and $25 million a year, down the drain. And if you're the CEO of a big multi-system hospital system, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And we've documented this in many places. And remember the paradox. Whatever you most need in life is hardest for you to find when you need it the most. That applies right here in your organization. Right now, if you're like every other organization, you're struggling with staffing. We're in the middle of a national, a worldwide staffing crisis. You probably have more vacancies than you want. You're probably having a harder time recruiting than you want. Those are things that increase workload, they increase exhaustion, they increase the reasons we would have to complain about things if we're a frontline worker. And that's the time we can least afford to have people do it. And so your challenge is, how do you overcome this paradox that what you most need right now is a positive, upbeat, inspired workforce, and what they most feel right now is beaten down, exhausted, stressed out, and wanting to complain. Now, the bad news is, as I said, complaining is a deeply ingrained habit. It is in our genes. Psychologists have shown that the human mind automatically gravitates toward the worst case, negative, frightening, depressing thought patterns, if you're not consciously structuring it. The good news is habits can be changed. And that's what we're going to talk about next. How can you use the Pickle Challenge to change habits? Complaining is just a habit. But as I said, the good news is habits can be changed. In his book, The Power of Habits, Charles Duhigg describes what are the steps to change a bad habit, to build a good habit. And there are two that are really important for purposes of our conversation. One, using visual and verbal cues. And two, use the power of ritual and repetition. And so we have this simple, but not always easy, simple promise that provides a cue. It's called the Pickle Pledge because people who are always complaining. And it says simply, I will turn every complaint into either a blessing or a constructive suggestion. There is nothing you can complain about that you cannot find both a blessing and a constructive suggestion. My head is killing me. Thank God for modern pharmacology. There's a pill I can take. Oh, and the first symptom of dehydration is a headache. I should drink some water. I had to park 6 blocks away and walk all the way to the mall. Thank God you have legs. How many people in wheelchairs would give anything to walk 6 blocks? Thank God you have a mall. How many parts of the world is that an unheard of luxury? Oh, by the way, if you spent more time at the gym and ate fewer donuts, walking 6 blocks wouldn't have been such a hardship. This is a profound, powerful change in mindset. From seeing the worst in everything, feeling like a victim, to finding the best in everything and feeling empowered to do something about it. So what we do is we challenge people to, at a personal level, memorize, and thousands of people have, Memorize that promise by repeating it daily. Put it where you can see it. Put it in your bathroom mirror. Put it on the seat of your car. Do it with others. We have hundreds of places where people are doing it in staff huddles. Children's Hospital New Orleans begins every safety huddle with everybody together reciting the Pickle Pledge. And they attribute that to a significant reduction in safety incidents. Why? Because instead of just complaining about things, oh, that ceiling tile is still dirty, people do something about it. What causes stained ceiling tiles? Water leaks. What do water leaks do? They make people slip and fall. So doing it in huddles is an incredible verbal cue to change your thinking, change your attitude, change your habit, change your behavior. And then visual reminders. Declaring your workspace to be a PFZ, a pickle-free zone. At Midland Memorial Hospital in Midland, Texas, their medical records department has a big bulletin board. It says pickle-free zone, and it has lots of other inspirational stuff on it. And they have something they call Code Pickle. If somebody's having a really hard time, really complaining, they go, Code Pickle. Everybody gathers in the main area. Together they do the Pickle Pledge out loud as a group, and then they go back to work. 1 minute it takes, and everything feels better. And what you're doing is you're turning resentment, which is what complaining is, into gratitude. You're turning learned helplessness, which is what complaining is. You wouldn't be complaining if you thought you could do something about it, into initiative. Let me share a personal story about this. My only horizontal experience in a hospital, I had acute diverticulitis. And I was at University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics as a patient. I used to work there. And it wasn't going well. And one day, the senior surgery resident came in and said, Joe, the treatment is not working. We're going to have to do surgery. We're going to have to cut out a part of your colon and put you on a colostomy bag. And it might be for just a year or two, but if it doesn't go well, it could be the rest of your life. And I said, no way. I would rather die. And the doctor said, well, that's another option. When the doctor walked out of the room, I got depressed. Who wouldn't? I started mentally complaining. Oh, wah, this sucks. And then I looked across at the whiteboard. You know how they have a whiteboard across from the patient's bed, and the patient gets half of it. And I had the Pickle Pledge. I had the Self-Empowerment Pledge. I had some of my other favorite sayings. I said those words out loud. I will turn every complaint, this really sucks, into a blessing. Thank God for this hospital and the little rural hospital where I first fell into this and had to be transferred. Thank God for these hospitals, they saved my life. Thank God for morphine and that little button that I could do at any time. And a constructive suggestion. And the only thing I could think of to do was walk. I got up out of bed, I grabbed my IV pole, I had my wristbands for each of the 7 promises of the Self-Empowerment Pledge hanging on my IV pole, and I walked. I walked around the nurse's station. And as I walked, I talked to myself. I talked to my colon. I mean, literally, I talked to my colon. I said, did you hear her? If you don't shape up, they're going to cut you up. No more hot dogs, no more cold beer. Get with the program here. The next day I walked a little farther. The next day I walked a little farther. 9 days later, I walked out of that hospital with my colon intact. It is still intact. Now, I pay more careful attention to what I eat, to exercise and things like that, but I am absolutely convinced that as important as the clinical therapy was, as grateful as I am for it, my own mindset was just as important. And later I had a conversation with a member of the surgery faculty there. I said that. He said, absolutely. We see it all the time. Now, more recently, I had a third insight. The first two being that promise can turn resentment into gratitude, learned helplessness into initiative. More recently, I realized it can also turn self-centeredness. And when you're complaining, it's all about me. Poor me. Wah, wah. I don't get enough. I don't have enough. Wah, wah. Into compassion for other people. I was getting on an airplane. I was the last person getting on. This is before COVID. Remember when BC stood for something other than before COVID? I was the last person on the plane. It's one of these small regional jets. 2 seats in one. I look down the aisle and every seat is taken, including half of mine. The guy sitting next to me was a wide body. He had pulled up the armrest, he had to, and he's sitting there with one of those wide body seat belts on. My first thought was, this sucks. I paid for a whole seat. I'm only going to get a half a seat. This is not fair. I'm going to write a letter to the CEO of Delta. By golly, I'm going to give him my mind. And then I remembered the promise that I'd been making to myself for well over 10 years. I will turn every complaint, this is going to be uncomfortable, into a blessing. It's a 90-minute flight. It's not a covered wagon in the snow. I can deal with this. And a constructive suggestion. And for me, it was noise-canceling headphones and a good book. I slide into my seat, and I mean literally, I had to sit like this. And I said, hello. You going home? You going away from home? And we talked for a few minutes. And then he said something that was absolutely heartbreaking. He looked around, he said, these planes are getting smaller all the time. I have been flying that exact same regional jet for more than 30 years. It has not shrunk. And what I believe he was saying to me is, you have no idea how much it hurts to be me in a situation like this, where I have to apologize to you for being me, when right now there's nothing I can do about it. And it was a heartbreaking moment. And I stopped thinking about myself and my own petty inconvenience, and I thought about what this poor guy has to go through every day of his life. I got off the plane. I left him behind. I stopped mentally writing a letter to the CEO of Delta. I had better things to do. I was more at peace with myself. I was happier. I was more productive. See, for me and for many other people, this simple promise has been life-changing. And when a critical mass of people, in a hospital, in a company, in a family, when a critical mass of people embrace this mindset of positivity, it can be culturally transforming. And that's what we'll talk about next. How the Pickle Challenge for Charity can transform the culture of your organization. The Pickle Pledge, that simple promise to turn complaints into blessings or constructive suggestions, has evolved organically into an organization-wide pickle challenge. The first hospital to take it to the higher level was Midland Memorial Hospital in Midland, Texas. They have pickles everywhere. Everybody knows the Pickle Pledge. They say it daily. When employees come in through the employee entrance, they are greeted by a 2,000-pound chainsaw carving of a happy pickle holding the sign saying "No Sour Attitudes," created by respiratory therapist Don Hill. I happen to have been at Midland Memorial Hospital when their accreditation surveyors came through a while back, BC, before COVID. And every one of the 3 surveyors, the administrator, the doctor, the nurse, all 3 of them talked about how much more positive the culture was than on their last visit. All 3 of them commented on the decorated pickle jars they saw all over the hospital. And the nurse surveyor said, the highlight of my entire week, I was up on a nursing unit and I overheard a nurse saying to a doctor, "Doc, you're being a pickle, put a quarter in the jar." And he did. Now, there's a cause and effect relationship between the pickle jars, the talking to people about their attitudes, challenging them to change their behaviors, and the improved culture that was palpable, visible to all 3 surveyors. We have seen an incredible tsunami of creativity when people embrace this Pickle Challenge for Charity. We've seen pickle parades at Children's Hospital New Orleans. They have a pickle cart that goes around the hospital and they give people pickles and other treats. We've seen pickle bake-offs, cookie bake-offs, cake bake-offs. You get to come down and sample everything and vote on the one that you think is the best. People are decorating their offices in incredibly creative ways, declaring their workspace to be a pickle-free zone, like this bulletin board at Doctors Hospital of Augusta in Georgia. We're seeing people come in pickle costumes. This Pickle Squad t-shirt created by the medical staff at Loma Linda University Medical Center, Murrieta. We are seeing all kinds of incredible, fun things. And I'll tell you, a great experience I had I was at Children's Hospital New Orleans, and I was there for a department head meeting. And the Environmental Services Department came barging in. Nobody knew it was going to happen except me. They came barging in to the front of the room, and they all did the Pickle Pledge together. Now, they didn't stand there and say the words. They performed it. And every single one of them knew it by heart, and they got a huge ovation. Now, think of this. How often do the housekeepers get a huge ovation from the suits? And all they had to do was come in and demonstrate the positivity of this Pickle Pledge. We have seen one of the highlights is pickle jar decorating contests. And people put incredible imagination into this. And they bring them all down to the cafeteria or some main lobby. And people vote on the one that they like the best. And these are a few of my favorites. Oscar the Grouch. Isn't that what it feels like when someone walks into the room with a negative attitude? Well, this really sucks. Whose idea was it? It just feels like Oscar coming out of a garbage can, doesn't it? And don't you want to say, buck up, soldier. Go put the uniform on, put a smile on your face, and get to work. Come join us here. Be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And if they keep whining and complaining, don't you just want to stick a pacifier in their mouth and say, oh, poor baby. And this is my all-time favorite pickle jar. Not because of the decoration, because of the message. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Whining and complaining never matters. Nobody ever solved a problem by complaining about it. It takes courage to stop whining and actually go do something or ask for help if you need it. Nobody helped another human being be a better person by talking about that person behind their back. It takes courage to stop talking about someone and actually go talk to that person. But that's the only way you help that person be a better person. And that's what this Pickle Challenge for Charity does. It helps us be a better person. And when enough of us make that commitment, it helps our organization be a better organization. Now, what do you do with all those quarters that get put in the pickle jars? All the money that you raise with the parades and the bake-offs? You donate it to a charity. Whatever charity your organization picks, pick something that resonates, that pulls on the heartstrings of your people, and they'll be excited about it. You turn complaints into contributions. Methodist Hospital and Methodist Children's in San Antonio, Texas, they put together a pickle squad, and they raised over $7,000 for the HCA Hope Fund. So all these complaints went to help people with real problems, people who had cancer, people whose homes had been destroyed in hurricanes or tornadoes. That was more than 4 years ago. And when we had our Values Pavilion at the annual conference of the American Organization for Nursing Leadership recently, guess who came in? The entire pickle squad from Methodist Hospital. They're still in the spirit 4 years later. And think of the impact that can have on an entire organization. So let me ask you to imagine. Imagine a world. Imagine a world where people turn resentment into gratitude, turn complaining into thank you. Imagine a world where people turn learned helplessness, I can't do anything about that, into initiative, that proceed until apprehended mindset. Do something about it. If you can't do something about it, find someone who can. Ask for the help you need. Imagine a world where people take the self-centeredness of complaining, all about me, wah, 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 poor me, and turn it into compassion for other people. Imagine a world where we turn our complaints about our first world problems into contributions for organizations that are helping people deal with real problems. Now, that sounds impossible, doesn't it? Let me give you a quick history lesson. Go back to 1986. Can you remember 1986? People smoked everywhere. You could not see across the cafeteria for all the cigarette smoke. You couldn't see the end of an airplane. You got in a taxi cab and you could smell the residue from whoever was there before. And in 1986, when Dr. C. Everett Koop, one of the great American heroes, said, we're going to have a smoke-free society, a lot of people wondered what he was smoking, because back then it seemed impossible. But look at our world today. Not just our society in the United States, all around the world, any airport in the world, people don't smoke. This is one of the most profound cultural transformations in the history of the world. If we can do that with an addictive drug that's being pushed by a multi-billion-dollar industry of white-collar drug pushers, why can't we do something that benefits everybody? The Pickle Pledge helps you be a better person. The Pickle Challenge helps your organization be a better organization. And turning complaints into contributions puts that money to work on something that really matters. One more thing. It's free. There's no cost. You can do the Pickle Challenge for charity at no cost whatsoever. It's no cost, all benefit. Why wouldn't you do that? And if enough of us do that, that imagine this world could become, this is our world. Let me wrap up by reminding you of that ultimate paradox. Whatever we most need at any time will be hardest for us to find when we need it the most. Right now, people are stressed out, they're burned out, they're exhausted, they're anxious, they're angry, and we're telling them, smile and turn complaints into contributions. Turn resentment into gratitude. It's never been a harder sell, but it's never been a more important sell. There are 3 resources that we can offer to help you get started. The Pickle Pledge website, picklepledge.com, has lots of examples. It has FAQs, frequently asked questions, a lot of guidance that can help you get started. And then my good friend and colleague, Dr. Bob Dent, Chief Nursing Officer at Emory Health in Atlanta, Bob and I wrote a book called Pickle Pledge. And it too has lots of examples, lots of great hints and strategies. And finally, at the end of this video, you'll see my contact information. Feel free to contact me. I'm best reached by email. You can text my cell phone. You can call me. And I respond within 24 hours. I will help you in any way I can. Let's start this movement. Let's make that imagination of a better world become the reality that our children grow up in.